Good morning, everybody. This is Don from Wizard Tower Games. I am back from the dead. Had a little bit of a medication reaction that knocked me on my butt for the past almost a week now, but I'm back and alive. And in today's video, I want to talk a little bit about 5e, and along with 5e, the question of, and I saw this actually talked about in one of the AD&D groups. There was a meme a guy posted about changing the rules in 5e, and people kind of comment you can't do that. And I just want to do a quick video and talk about, can you really change the rules in 5e? Is changing the rules in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons contrary to the rules? And the short answer is no, it's not. One of the first rules of Dungeons & Dragons, for anybody who's actually read any of the original material, is that not only can you change rules in Dungeons & Dragons, I believe Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson's intent was they encouraged you to change the rules in Dungeons & Dragons. I've had this discussion with Tim Kask before. Let's face it, Tim Kask was the first paid employee of TSR. Tim Kask is, of all the surviving people that worked with TSR, he is probably the most knowledgeable of the intimates of the early days of Dungeons & Dragons. As Tim has told me many times, is the stories of him sitting in the office with Gary and talking about the what ifs. So, I think the reason also why D&D became so popular because it was so flexible. Now, 5th edition. I know that a lot of people don't like 5th edition, and I know a lot of people love it. 5th edition is the current edition. They're supposedly coming out with another iteration of D&D. Now, it was supposed to come out earlier this year for the 50th, and now it's being bumped back till later, even into 2025. And I'm not going to presume to know what the changes are of that. I am familiar with 5e. I have played the game. I've written some rule sets for it for Wizard Tower Games. In fact, in the Lost Adventures of Gary Con that we are now getting ready to put to print finally, there is 5e content in that book. Nowhere in the 5e rules does it specifically say you cannot change rules. Now, why would you want to change a rule in 5e? Maybe that's the question to ask. Well, easily. What happens if there's a situation that you come into while playing 5e, and let's say that you as a DM find that a certain race or a certain class is heavily imbalanced? Well, simply don't allow it in your game. If weapon breakage, as an example, which was a thing in AD&D, is not a thing in 5e, what's wrong with putting a rule saying that if you roll a 1 when you're attacking another individual or a monster, and you roll a 1, maybe you say the blade is cracked, and the next roll that you roll 5 or under breaks the blade. In this argument that happened in this long thread, that was basically the premise of it was, can you put weapon breakage in 5e? That was a question, by the way, that was asked. Now, I would probably do it that way. What I'd probably do is say, if you roll a 1 when fighting another being that has a weapon, your blade is cracked, your weapon is cracked, it's damaged in some way, and unless you replace it, if you continue to battle with that, the next roll 5 or under, or 3 or under, the weapon will break. I think that's a fair rule. That's, as a matter of fact, how we utilize it in open worlds that we're getting ready to put out. And that's actually a rule that I use is my homebrew rule in my AD&D games. So I think that you can. I think that you can go ahead and have weapon breakage. I think you can change rules. I think you can say, as a DM, I'm not going to allow this race or this class in the game because, let's face it, in 5e, there are a lot of classes and races in the game that are, I think, imbalanced to the game. Now, I know why they put them in there. Let's face it, especially with electronic gaming happening and, you know, games on our phones and such, people love power-ups. They love to be able to use cheat codes. Famously, David Floor even admitted today, David, I'm not calling you out, my friend, but David Floor even admitted today about his cheat codes he uses in Baldur's Gate, you know, and people love them, and I respect for that. But as a DM, I think that you have the power to change rules. But there's a trick here, and there's a flip side to changing rules, and this is actually, I think, a pretty serious subject to take on as a DM, and that is, if you're going to change a rule, be consistent. Make sure that that rule is, if it applies for this game session, it applies for next game session. You cannot cherry pick rules and be flippant about them, because that then becomes unfair to your players. So if you're going to use, as an example, weapon breakage in your campaign, you can't use it against player A and then 3 hours later not use it against player B. You can't use it as a punishment. And that's another thing that's very, very key here with Dungeons and Dragons is, if you're going to modify and or change any rules, and if you're going to be consistent, make sure you're not being punitive to do it. Like, as an example, I know a lot of DMs out there, and I ran into so many of them, that they think it's a direct competition, and if players beat the DM's plans, no matter how carefully laid they are, the DM gets pissed, and the DM will take, you know, revenge on them, you know, by throwing them a super powerful monster or something, or in the plans, if there was some treasure that was going to be in a room, and if searched they found it, he will take that treasure, or she'll take that treasure away. So, yeah, you can change the rules in 5e. I think you can do that, but be consistent and don't be punitive when you do it. So that's going to be a quick little video I made. Just want to do a little quick, my opinion on, can you change the rules of 5e? So it's not Wizard Tower Games. Hope everybody is having a good week. It is Thursday. Hope everybody has a good weekend. And I will talk to you guys later.